Hey, we're back out at the range, and I put a short video out not long ago about what if you were able to take a 290 grain cast projectile from an NOE mold that has a concave base, basically 11 grains of volume in the bottom of the projectile, and loaded it up with blue dot. And well, we went ahead and did that, and the pistol I'm using is set up for 460 rolling pressure, so I decided to go ahead and run it through and see what happens. So we ran it through my Colt, and we ended up with some very unique performance, I think. In fact, overpressure for certain. We're going to have to do a little work on the modeling and bring it in line with real life. But woo! Well, 1396. Yeah, not what I was expecting. The modeling is off. Running small primers. 1400 feet a second. That's a hot frickin' load right there. .961 and a pierced primer. .1375. Very heavy pressure marks on the primer. .1318. Okay, 11 grains. .1354. My God, I don't know what the numbers on that is, but they're going to be crazy. .1523. .1392, primer pierced. I'm going to save a couple, and I'm actually going to do a wood shot now. Let's do one more through the chrono. .1347. All right, let's go get some wood. So we're running a 280 some grain projectile at about 1350, 1340. We'll have to run the numbers on them and see what we actually got, or what we're getting. I'm going to turn the chrono off. Let's move this over here. Take a look at our brass. One of them pierced, so this is definitely a frickin' hot load. Okay, let's see what we have happen. Right there is where we hit in the front, which is kind of close to the other 45 shot. Oh, well, I found it. The slug is back through the fifth board. Slug's back through the fifth board. Right there it is. So it went through 5. Alright, let's see what we can do on getting this out. Alright. We can still see our hollow cavity. We ended up losing some of the skirting. I don't know if it broke off as it was going into the projectile or not. Hey, basically came up with some additional information that I need to add into this video, so we sort of know why we saw some of the numbers that we saw. This was the projectile that I was using. This is a .46 caliber projectile that I ended up sizing to .452. This particular projectile weighs 282.8 grains. And that's after powder coating and resizing, and that's sort of typical. You see a couple grains variation cast with wheel weight, so it's not absolutely precise down to a grain from one projectile being cast to the next. That's just sort of the nature of the process. This was the projectile that I recovered from the wood shot. That's the projectile that I recovered from the wood shot. And this was the piece which weighs 162 grains, and it traveled through 5 boards. It was in between the 5th and the 6th board, and that's where it came to a stop. And you can basically see the nose profile may have flattened a little bit. Some of that actually could be from the seeding process from the die, but anyhow, it did sort of flatten the nose slightly compared to the unseeded projectile that I have as an example. And that weighs 162 grains. That went through, as I said, went through 5 boards. This is the bottom portion of the projectile. Okay, so this makes sense. This is the hollow cavity that sits behind the nose of the projectile. So we can still see somewhat of a hollow cavity there. And this basically would sit onto or connect onto that projectile like that. And I don't know whether it was the pressure applied in the firing process or if it was the impact of the board. I think this actually happened in the chamber based off of chamber pressure. And I believe it occurred basically where this crimping seam is. I think that put a weakened defect. I think it separated a little bit lower than what that crimp groove is, because I believe I can see just a little bit of the existing crimp groove on this piece that we recovered. I think it's right here. So bottom line, this design of projectile definitely is not suitable for the pressures that we ran it at. So I am going to go back and do some additional testing and get the velocities down into the 800 and 900 foot a second range and work up slowly from there. Since we have some data to go by, we can basically do that now. So this end piece, 118 grains, 118.4, and the nose was 162. So it retained almost all of its weight. This the projectile went 5.5 boards. This was inside of the first board, almost exiting the first board.